Anyway, it is Geordie Greep time, where we're gonna talk about the new sound, new album released by Geordie Greep about 2 weeks ago now, so I'm a bit behind. Probably by the time this is on YouTube, it's gonna be 3 weeks. My bad, but it took me way longer than I thought to get into this one. I'm not dropping this album because I really like this album. Geordie Greep, formerly the frontman of Black Midi. This album has kind of been painted in the media broadly as kind of an incel album, in the sense of he's portraying characters that would be now, in today's kind of dialogue, part of like the manosphere or incels. And like, I've tried to avoid like actually listening to other people's reviews or like reading too much on it, because like I wanted to like make sure my opinion was like totally fucking grounded, and then talk to people about it, and then I can listen to everyone else's, because I kind of want to be like, not moved by how other people think. I want to have my own takes. But yeah, I think the incel thing is like, yes, on first reaction, particularly to like the lead single, particularly the lead single could be construed as like glorification of a guy using a sex work to fulfill a desire of, like, for want of a better word, sexual content. And it is that, but I think when it's put in the context of the full record, it's very, I'd say, apparent that he kind of putting these bad people, portraying these bad people as bad people. Shouldn't be like them, but it's interesting to write stories from the perspectives of. But yeah, I think there is the incel narrative for sure. I think from his previous work in Black Midi and also on this record, Geordie Greep kind of writes in this like timeless period. It's not clearly current day. Some of the characters seem like they're like centuries old. Some of them seem like they could be today, or they could be like 40 years ago. It's not particularly clear. So I don't think the central thesis of the album is to be like, here's some incels, look how bad they are. I think it's more of how I kind of thought of it as a hopeless romantic, kind of like the through line of the album. Or not hopeless, sorry, pathetic romance, as opposed to a hopeless romance. And what I mean by a pathetic is like, I think each of the characters that are kind of described in these songs see themselves as kind of like a kind of traditional hopeless romantic in like a classical novel. Maybe like a classical movie like Casablanca. I haven't actually seen Casablanca, but I think that's what it's about. I could be wrong. But like, I think they see themselves as like the kind of like trad man or like trad husband kind of trope, where they just have this, they find the one, and that one, the only person they're ever gonna be. And like, they need to be with these people, but these people are broken. So a lot of the time, like, the one in their eyes is actually a sex worker, because these are like the only people the only women, I suppose, that they can have meaningful interaction with, because they're so socially inept or secluded. So I think that's actually the central thesis of the album, as opposed to incels and they're bad. I think it's more, well, these people are bad people, but I think it's less so about like an Andrew Tate type and more so about the people he preys on, like guys who just, if they had a bit of help, I think they'd be alright. But they don't. So they turn into bad. I think that's broadly what the album. But aside from lyrics, I think musically, this is beautiful. I think it's fantastically interesting. I think he takes what was clearly now his kind of musical input in Black Midi, which was kind of like these like crazy like jazz rock fillers and like super tight like math rock fucking riffs under these like bizarre lyricism. And now that it's just his project, it's kind of like this crazy like jazz, bossa nova, math rock, prog rock fusion, where it goes from like some of the most, you know, technically impressive like jazz break you'll ever hear to like weird like kind of very much like math rock, post rock, post punk kind of moments where it's like all these like dissonant chords and like everything's anxious and like everything's loud and everything's bad. I think it's a fantastic like concoction of like both things that are relevant kind of in that, you know, London, Brixton music scene, and also like Brazilian jazz. I think he recorded like half of this album in Brazil with musicians he had just met. So it has this crazy sound. Some would say it has a new sound. Huh? What do you think of that? That was off the dome. But anyway, let's go in with track 1 with Geordie Greep, the new sound, Blues.
Do you know what I mean? 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 Do you know what I mean?
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
It's your favorite turn of phrase. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
This is the kind of like math rock stuff I'm talking about. He like kind of opened this song with like, okay, I'm gonna do a Black Midi track. Particularly this part reeks of like, turn the music up a tiny bit.
And you can curse like no one ever has done. And you have a bigger dick than any man who's ever lived. And you can come more than 100 stallions. I know
There he is. Can come more than 100 stallions. This has to be a weirdo. But this this kind of like weird, creepy, kind of like slow build up with like just really strange but very interesting lyricism put over the top is like quintessential Black Midi. So I think this track, while it does kind of show, I'll let him have his moment.
Out to lunch.
Love that shit. I just think it's so cool. The predominant riff that's kind of like meandering up and down guitar is so cool. And then he has this like crescendo synth coming in for like the new verse. It's just really fucking cool. Brilliant lyricism there. And there we have it. That's Blues by Geordie Greep. Great opening track. I think will evolve in the kind of indie music zeitgeist, if you will, as one of the great opening tracks. I think lyrically, first of all, he's kind of talking about kind of one of these like manosphere types, how they think they're amazing. They have a bigger cock than whatever, and they put their hand in their pocket like they have a gun. They put their hand in their pocket. They think Napoleon lyric, great moment. So I think he's immediately opening up the record, being like, "Look, I don't like these guys. Here's a track of me, like almost like dissing the kind of whole aura that they have." But beneath that, he's kind of opening to like his pre-existing fans with a familiar sound, that kind of like quintessential Black Midi math rock riffing, and then the kind of like these like slow moments where they slowly build up tension. There's like weird anxious chords, and his lyrics and his vocals are like increasing in intensity, and he's saying provocative, like stallions or whatever. You know, it really kind of like clicks you in. And then after that break, the mathrock riffs come back. But there's these new elements of like synth sounds and like keys, counter melodies. Interesting. And then slowly it's getting more and more intense. There's like counter melodies everywhere. There's like horns coming in. And he's just talking about how this guy is just doomed. Just doomed. He's just a bad guy. And the whole world is going to collapse beneath him because his ego is going to fall one day. At the end of the day, that's all he has. I think. Cool. And definitely one of my favorite tracks on the whole album is the opening track, Blues. But we're now going to roll into track number 2, Era. Just opening this track with something like completely new, with like this kind of like crazy like bossa nova like chilled out beat after this like crazy intense opener. It's just like such like a change in vibe, but it's really welcomed. Great break there, really cool. This just came to me now, but the instrumental is kind of giving Coconut Mall from Mario Kart Wii. Low key. I did look at the Genius annotations on these songs and like, this album's obviously inspired by Mario Kart 8 because he's got Super Mario as like on Twitter. I don't think it is. I just think Mario Kart has the same influences in the soundtrack that he does. But yeah, that whole chorus where he's going ta-ra, 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 please remember me. This is just some guy who just like desperately wants to be remembered. And the whole song is him just kind of like anxiously being like, oh my god, the world's gonna end. And no one's gonna know who I am. It is so Mario Kart, yeah. Very Mario Kart vibes on this track. I just like to imagine like the fucking Brazilian fathers of Bossa Nova looking down on the youth of today going like, yeah, this is so Mario Kart Wii. But hey, that's how things evolve. That's how things evolve. That's just how we see things now. Go off, Geordie. I do think this is also the first track where he really showcases that he does have a great singing voice. I think the first track is a bit too like, there's too much going on to really like hone in on the fact that like, oh, this guy's got a great voice. But he really lets himself go off here. But yeah, that's the second track, Terra. I've kind of said all of my opinions on it while it was running. But another great track. Like my first listen, because Blues was the second single released on the album, so I'd already heard Blues. But on my first listen, when I heard Terra, I was like, all right, this guy's got me. I like the singles, but I love this. Although I think I do now. I think I respect Blues a lot more in the broader context of the album. But Terra, fantastic track. And now the next track is Holy Holy, which is the lead single of the album. Kind of controversial when it released. People were like, is GEORDIE GREEP'S saying that sexual conquest of sex workers is good? He's not. In fact, he said in interviews that the whole point of this is to kind of taking on the mantra in film or literature where you show instead of telling people that things are bad. He's showing that it's bad. But the problem is he puts it over this, like, you're going to hear it in a second, but he puts it over this crazy, like, sounds like Boogie Wonderland kind of like introduction, and like this amazing, immaculate instrumental. And he's like giving the vocal performance of his career, but it is kind of like about this problematic guy. But it is a fantastic song. While it does, you know, it is a bad character's perspective. So it's important not to be like, this is a glorification of this guy's behavior. And I think when you look at it like that, take it for that, in that context, it's a great track. Well, let's go. Holy Holy, GEORDIE GREEP. Super Boogie Wonderland moment. Just a fucking crazy good opening. Those guitars are ripping. The tone of that like riff, it's crazy good. Little build up, little bossa nova drums coming in, and then the fill for the next verse. Oh, hits. It's true. Also, using the word tart, I hate. I'll be real. I don't care how British you are. I feel like that meme where it's like reading a book that you disagree with. That's what I think when I'm listening to this song. I don't agree with this guy. There you have it. Nice fade out at the end. Not enough fading out of songs anymore. I think it's kind of gone out of fashion. But yeah. That's Holy Holy. The song that sparked so much discussion on Twitter. But I think at the end of it, he does start kind of breaking through, poking holes through the character to kind of show that like this guy is a bit pathetic. Going back to that pathetic romantic theme that I was talking about earlier, with the repetition of how much will that cost. After all of this, like, oh, I'm amazing. I get all the barmaids I want, you know. You do everything I say. But then it's just kind of like at the end, it's like, how much will that cost? How much will that cost? How much will that cost? It's like, you know, this guy can only be this fucking fulfilled ego that he is because he's paying for it. And if he didn't have that, he would have nothing. But I think it's just a banger. Like, fucking problematic lyrics aside, it sounds great. It's scratchy as fuck. Some incredible instrumentation in there. I don't even know how to begin to describe it. Just like crazy jazz rock fusion shit going on the whole time. There's like those little chime bells. I don't know what they're called. At some stage at the end there, and like a xylophone. He's just like, he had the whole arsenal. Every instrument is here. A great track. It's fun to talk about things that are controversial too. Interesting. Everyone's got a different opinion. Because I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't even care. It's just fun to listen to. And some people are like, what's this guy yapping about? I can't listen to this. So it's a fucking dichotomy. More than a dichotomy, it's a trichotomy. It's everything. Anyway, let's keep going. Track number 4, an instrumental track with the same title as the album. And let's go. This is just a really cool instrumental track with like really catchy breaks. He's clearly got like a full fucking jazz band in a room and they're just jamming, and he's called it the new sound. I don't know, this is obviously an old sound. I don't know if it's some sort of like juxtaposition. Well, it's an old sound mixed with his sound, which is very much new and at the forefront of British post-rock. So I guess it is, overly speaking, a new sound. Once again, giving Mario Kart. But I think, yeah, it's kind of just a statement. It's like, we've had these 3 fucking big tracks. We've just had the biggest track, the biggest hitter. And now we're just going to have like a nice instrumental. And I'm like, yeah, this is my new sound. This is what we're bringing to the table now. I'm GEORDIE Greep, here I am. That's cool. Also just a groover. Also little catchy instrumental riffs in there. Really tight drumming. I love that little do 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 do. Nice. Keep saying nice. This whole song is just nice. It was very like eloquent or something. There we go. That's the first and only instrumental track on the album. Definitely interesting that it's titled the same, for sure. But yeah, cool track. It's a vibe. Some great like catchy riffs in there, mixing in, you know, traditional kind of bossa nova musicianship, tying it in to kind of a newer post-punk guitar sound. Not so much though. It's mostly bossa nova, mostly old sound, but there's a bit of new. There's a bit of stylistic influence from the Greep himself, and it's great, cool. But now we're into kind of, you know, it's the middle of the album, but it feels like the new sound is what breaks kind of the first section, the back end, because there's some shorter tracks here before getting to the really long track. But yeah, track number 5. And here's kind of the thrashy post-punk moments that I was kind of talking about before, but I love the kind of militaristic beat on the guitar, but then ending the phrase with a kind of very kind of almost hopeful chord with the boom, boom. It's cool. It's a really cool swing, like a melodic swing. Cool. But anyway, this is about a guy, if you haven't picked up, who's like in the military, and he spends his lunch break going to like brothels. But he's embarrassed by them. He doesn't want anyone to actually know. That's what he was talking about. Someone kind of remarked about these sex work. He went, "Oh, I don't know anything about them," and he was hoping that they wouldn't go up to him and recognize him. They're like embarrass him, because obviously that's embarrassing. Because this guy thinks he's above the actions he's actually doing.
What are you talking about, home? I ain't got no home.
No. So that was Walk Up. Cool little track. I think, broadly speaking, in the album, one of the weak tracks, or maybe like less interesting tracks, particularly after like such a strong opening. But definitely some cool moments, very reminiscent of Black Midi, particularly with that break where it goes from like very, you know, by the beat kind of metronomic riffs to like a crazy like free riff where there was like guitars going crazy, horns going crazy, drums going crazy, everything's going crazy. And then bring it back to that kind of like musically very interesting, very cool. But yeah, I think weaker than the opening track for me anyway. But anyway, next track, Through a War. Just another collection of just really cool, just like catchy riff after catchy riff after catchy riff. Also, I think some of the stronger vocal moments in the albums as well. It's very clean. He's just showing he's a great songwriter, great melody writer. I think it really shows a lot of it off here, because the instrumental, while it's great, is kind of stripped back. I do think this song actually lyrically is more so in of like a traditional hopeless romantic. This is a military man who's a horrible bloke, conquesting and all that. But I think the love he has is real. I don't think it's like something he's paying for. But it's still this overarching theme, like a yearning. He's doing all these horrible things, but all he really is doing is yearning for his lover, which is kind of sad in a way. I really like the instrumental shift as he's going to the yearning with his lover, and then going back to like the kind of like stricter, jazzier talking about horrible guy. It's kind of trademark. Kind of trademark. Those keys coming in now, they electrify me. I love it. And then the backing vocals, just like every corner, every like time you think you're going down like a straight corridor musically, he like turns around a corner, and there's something new going on. It's constantly changing, interesting. He's constantly creating moments that are memorable, and not a lot of musicians can do that, or you just don't. I just really like it. Through a War by GEORDIE GREEP. Great track. I think the middle section of this album is the lull. I think the front is very strong. I think the end is very strong. And we're coming into the end now. I think the strongest part of this album is from As If a Waltz to If You Are But a Dream. In the back end. I think the middle does lull a bit and kind of takes it away from being maybe like 10 out of 10 classic album. But that being said, it's a lull in comparison with like the cream of the crop. Like, I do think this is great. Great track, True War. But it's not, once again, similar to Walk Up, it's not really as interesting as Blues, Terra, Holy. But with much ado, track number 7, the shortest track on the album, Bongo Season. I think this has the most unique instrumental track. I think it sounds quite different to the rest of the album. Just because it's mostly, the drums are kind of leading it. I guess makes sense because it's called Bongo Season. And it's mostly instrumental, but there are other. Nice little poem. Kind of about how, well, it's existentially sad, but it is, I think, quite beautiful. How these two mice have died and they're no longer in this world, yet the orchestra below them says hello. I think it's quite beautiful. Obviously, a bit harrowing, Kind of ties in with the theme of Terra, where this guy desperately wants to be remembered because the world's just going to keep going without, even if the world ends, no one's going to remember. That's tragic. Whereas this is kind of being like, look, these two mice, they loved each other, their tails were interlinked. They're no longer in this world, but the beautiful music still plays. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just how things are. And I think that's really nice, personally. Maybe it's profoundly sad to others, but I really like it. But in a much more bigger way, Bongo Season is sweeping the globe. I think this track was just instrumental where they used bongos, and he was like, I don't want to have 2 instrumental tracks on the album, so I'm going to put some nice little poem I wrote at the start, and then at the end, I don't know, I'm going to say Bongo Season. Who cares? It's fun. And he's right, it is fun. I think calling a track Bongo Season is just a fun thing to do. Sometimes that's all it has to be. Sometimes it can just be a good. But yeah, that's track 7, Bongo Season. We're going into track 8, Motorbike, which is the only track with a feature, and it features Seth Evans, who is the producer of this record, but also former member of played the bass. He never put any vocals on a Black Midi track, as far as I'm aware, but he does have vocals on this track. So let's hear it. Let's hear Seth Evans. GEORDIE GREEP doesn't sing at all on this track. It's all Seth Evans. Let's hear it. And we got the crazy stuff back. This is a crazy track. Just about a motorbike chase. I think the thing that immediately kind of hit me when this track comes on, and kind of to a fault, I think Seth Evans just isn't really a strong vocalist, particularly in comparison to Drew. He's a fantastic musician, and evidently from this record, fantastic producer, but I just don't think he's the vocalist. The instrumental's cool. I think the idea is cool. And it's well executed. I just think his voice is lacking, for me. I also don't really think it just one, sonically fits in with the broader album, and two, I don't think it thematically really fits in with the rest of it. But I don't think it's a bad song, but I think this is the weakest point on the record. That's probably a given by the fact that I'm talking over it instead of listening to it. But here we are with, you know, the classic kind of like dissonance, kind of anxiety-inducing chords, with the intensity building, lyrically, and rhythmically, percussionally. Well, I guess he's running away from a lover. So I guess that does kind of tie into the theme of yearning. And it's an instrumental for the rest of the track. I do like the instrumental, to be honest. The dissonant chords and the weird hornage going on, I do like. But I just think the overall song, it's just not my favorite. It's just not my favorite. I'm sorry, Steph. I'm sorry, Shank. That's what your nickname is. I forgot to show out the CD right here, and it has the pair of them sitting down, and it says Seth Shank Evans. I don't know if that's gonna come into focus. Yeah. I'm sorry, Shank. I do like the crazy horns. I like that moment. That moment's memorable. I'd be hearing that moment a lot in my head. But I don't know. It just feels too drawn out or something. They had this whole lyrical section that I'm not that about, and then the instrumental section is like another 2 minutes after that. I don't know, it's just yeah, it's a much weaker moment record. But that's okay. Not everything has to be amazing. It's still good. That you're a motorbike lover. Okay. That's that. I think I've said more than enough about that track. So I'm just going to go straight into As If a Waltz, which is coming into the conclusion of the record. And I think it's everything from this point. It's fantastic. I think he outdoes himself. And this sounds like something like Michael Jackson. The opening. That opening riff. I think this is the song that he said felt the most personal to him on the record. I could be remembering that wrong. It was in a Pitchfork interview on Instagram. I'll fact check it. This is once again a song of a guy falling in love with a sex worker. That's what If the Only the Hour stuff's talking about. And he loves her so much he wants to hide in her work and see if everyone else has the same attachment to her that he does. It's kind of sad. You definitely watch Pretty Women? Absolutely. This is very Pretty Women. The whole record is like super Pretty Women. But it's like guys who think they're the guy in Pretty Women. But I do think, you know, in the broader context of this one, I think it's a really sweet song. This guy really loves this. But he only gets to engage with her for an hour. And I think that's profoundly sad. Crazy guitars at the break there, by the way. Like the record scratching almost with the guitar. Whew. Like, this is all just in his head. None of this is real. He should try talking to women. Yeah, I think that's the problem with like all of the guys he's writing about in this album. It is interesting. Like, he has publicly said, and I think it is apparent from the lyrics, but he has also publicly said, you know, these are characters. But you know, there has to be some inkling of truth. I mean, I don't know what this guy's like in his private life. Yeah, he doesn't even know she wouldn't want any of this exactly, or if she would. But she probably doesn't. I mean, I'd say it's close to definitely would. I'd say she has a million clients who are as sad and lonely as this guy, who idolize her, and she doesn't even think about it. I'd say this is a very sad truth for a lot of lonely men, and they just need help, and they're not getting it. And that creates this fucking cycle of horrible guys. But yeah, the rest of this song is just a crazy, funky instrumental. It's like, fair enough, man. He's like, I'm gonna make this like a really like heart-wrenching song, and then we're just gonna go off. We're just gonna have like this crazy, sick fusion instrumental afterwards for like 2 minutes. These are the kind of guys who before probably would have only lusted through prostitution or some other sex work in that vein, but now they have like these like corners online where they're told that the fact that they can only get this through payment is like women's fault, women not giving them a chance, rather than they're themselves being the problem. And that's what creates this like pool of hate that you see all the time with the likes of Andrew Tate, or I don't know who else exists. It's a big character on the sphere, but you know what I mean. Kind of like 4chan incels hating women because they don't get a chance, and one woman talks to them ever, so they're in love with them, and then like they've got their heart broken, like this guy who's like, oh, but if only I had more time with you and we didn't meet because I was paying you to have sex with me, you know? Symptom of the times, but it's also always been, which I think is kind of highlighted in these tracks as well. They are kind of set in a timeless period, and are kind of, they've always been like this, there's always been, but there's definitely a growing because of the internet being able to propagate. I don't know. I think one, that's kind of like a fantastic, lyrically heart-wrenching, but also thought-provoking, and that's cool. Have a whole discussion about the guy and why it's bad, but it's also conflicting because like it's actually deeply sad that how he views the world, that he wouldn't even take into consideration that the woman has no interest in it. She probably would hate to hear that he's having these ideas. But then also it's like this crazy jazz fusion instrumental, and then he's like, this instrumental's so crazy that I'm gonna just go off for 2 minutes after I stopped singing. Fantastic track. He also had the waltz, obviously called like a waltz. There was some waltzes in there, that really kind of like brought you into this kind of like loving tale. But then listen to the lyrics and you're like, oh, this isn't that nice actually. Yeah, great track, one of my favorites. Now we kind of got like the mantelpiece, somewhat the finale, The Magician, which is a 12-minute track. It's great. Let's run it, or come to the end now. Let's run it. Instrumental is just so like, it just kind of like takes me, it's like I'm floating. longest track. I think the most engaging of all of the tracks. There's just so much going on. There's a lot of lyrics to like dig into there, and I haven't spent like, I feel like you could spend an entire hour talking about the lyrics in this song because there's so much written down. It's 12 minutes. There's so much interesting instrumentation happening. I think my favorite moments are when everything just like comes down, and he's really like opening his heart. He's like, yeah, this all sucks. I'm like imagining this person that's been really bad to me, but it's actually just I'm hiding behind that. It's not real. You know, it never actually happened. And I think it's amazing. I think that whole track really summarizes all of the ideas that the rest of the album has, plus them in one place, and it feels the most like it's a real person. Like, it doesn't feel like any of the characters. This feels like something a real person is dealing with. And I think I just connect with that more. Great. I think it's fantastic. Greep the Magician. You hear this? A masterpiece. That was 12 minutes. Now, we're going to go into the last song, which is actually a cover. The last song is a Frank Sinatra cover. If You Are But a Dream. I watched the interview with him talking about why he put this cover at the end, and he was like, I was just listening to Frank Sinatra, and I thought this really fit in with the whole theme of the album, and I really liked it, so I wanted to cover it. I was like, that's fun. Okay. Also, he fucking kills it. This guy can croon. That's for fucking sure. It's almost like this is what every other song wanted to be, because this guy actually had this love that is so dreamlike that he never wants it to end, whereas everyone else, it actually is a dream. You know, it kind of like tops it all off. A lot of these Manosphere guys look to men of the past to model their behaviors. That's a good point, actually. That could be tying in with everything. I didn't think about it like that. Yeah. Clever. They do. They're all like, there's that Twitter account that like keeps posting like traditional Roman shit. And it's like, this is when things were better. Like, hey man, sure. Yeah, they really grab onto tradition. Because that's what men were meant. Beautiful stuff. And there we have it. That's the final track of Geordie Greep the New Single. If You Are But a Dream. So we finished that track, and we finished the album. I think overall, beautiful, fantastic album, with a lot of interesting themes and topics. There's obviously a lot of talking points and lyricism that is problematic, misogynistic, pointedly so, that it is to point out that they're a bad way, that they're bad people, they're bad things, and I think it is the whole album provokes conversation, and on top of all of that, or beneath all of that, there are some of the most fantastically old school and new school instrumentals beneath all of it that really ties everything together. And maybe the fact that it's the old music underneath it is kind of another hint to it kind of being latching onto the past. But that might be a stretch. I think he just likes that sound. I don't think it's much deeper than that. But yeah, really like this record. I don't know. Give it a rating. Go to 4 out of 5. Put that on the screen. I don't think it's a perfect album, but I think it's amazing. I think I will listen to it time and time again. And it might even be knocking about my top albums of the year. Who knows? I'll have to find out later.